Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're looking into something, well, we've all been there, right? It's that thing nobody really likes to deal with, breaking bad news.
Oh, yeah. We've all been on the receiving end, and probably some of us on the giving end, too.
Right, exactly. On both sides. And it never really seems to get any easier, but what if there were some secret tips or tricks we could, uncover to make this whole process less painful?
Well, you know what? There might just be, you just never know where you'll find advice. And for this deep dive, we're going to a surprising source,
Okay, hit me with it.
a WikiHow article on breaking bad news.
Really? WikiHow? I mean, I wouldn't have thought to go there for, communication advice.
Yeah, believe it or not, they often have surprisingly practical tips. This particular article breaks the process down into three parts: preparing yourself, setting the stage, and actually delivering the news.
Makes sense.
So let's start with the preparation phase.
Okay.
Because they make a point about self-care for the person delivering the bad news. I found this really interesting.
So taking care of yourself before even thinking about the other person, isn't that a bit, I don't know, counterintuitive? Like, shouldn't the focus be on the person who's going to receive the bad news?
It might seem that way at first glance, but think about it. If you're a mess,
Yeah.
how can you possibly communicate clearly and provide support to the other person?
Yeah, that's true.
The article suggests taking a moment to kind of process the information before you share it, making sure you're in a clear, composed headspace to deliver the news effectively.
That makes a lot of sense, but wouldn't that, taking that time for yourself, wouldn't that delay the delivery and potentially, I don't know, make things worse? What if the news is really time sensitive?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It highlights the need for balance. This isn't about taking hours or days to process, but, maybe allowing yourself a few minutes to gather your thoughts, your emotions. Sometimes even a few deep breaths can make a world of difference.
Okay, yeah. Deep breaths are always good.
Always good.
I'm starting to see the value in that. What else does the article suggest in terms of preparation?
Well, having a clear narrative in mind, knowing what you're going to share and avoiding beating around the bush. This brings up the importance of directness, while, still maintaining sensitivity.
I hate it when people drag out bad news, just rip off the Band-Aid, get to the point, but, do it in a way that acknowledges, the weight of the situation.
Exactly. And to make that delivery smoother, they actually suggest, get this, practicing what you're going to say. Now, of course, you don't want to sound like, a robot reciting lines, but finding a comfortable, natural way to express the information can make a huge difference. It can help you feel, more prepared, less anxious about the conversation.
That's a really good point. And I can see how rehearsing could help you find the right tone and avoid stumbling over your words, especially if you're, feeling emotional. But isn't there a risk that it could sound insincere or rehearsed if you're not careful?
Oh, absolutely. That's a valid concern. The key here is not to memorize like a script word for word, but rather to familiarize yourself with the key points you want to convey. Experiment with different ways of phrasing them, finding that balance, preparedness, and authenticity.
So you're advocating for the middle ground, like a thoughtful rehearsal that helps you feel confident but doesn't make it sound like you're reading from a teleprompter.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where you feel prepared, but you're also able to respond genuinely to the other person's reactions and emotions.
That makes sense. Okay, so we talked about preparing ourselves, right? Getting ready to deliver bad news. But what about preparing the environment for having this kind of sensitive conversation? Does the WikiHow article, does it give any guidance on that?
It really does. The next section of the article is all about, they call it setting the stage, and they have some really interesting points. And they start by saying, make sure you're the right person to deliver the news in the first place.
Right. That seems obvious, but I guess in a crisis, it might not always, be the first thing you think about. Can you give me some examples? Like, what do they mean by that?
I think it's about considering the relationships and the sensitivity of the information. Like, for example, those situations where someone announces a death on social media before the immediate family has even been told.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of thinking about who should be the one to deliver bad news, and making sure it's done through the right channels.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't really considered the ethical implications. of who delivers the news, but it makes total sense. It's about respect, sensitivity, not just when blurting it out to whoever happens to be nearby.
Exactly. Exactly. And once you've established that you're the right person to deliver the news, then the article goes into the practicalities of creating a comfortable and private environment. They talk about turning off distractions, finding a quiet place to sit, making sure you won't be interrupted.
Okay, so choosing the right environment. I mean, it seems obvious, but it's easy to overlook that in a crisis. I actually remember one time I was told some pretty major news in the middle of a crowded coffee shop.
Oh, wow.
I know. And the noise, the chatter, the lack of privacy, it made the whole experience so much worse. It's like the bad news itself wasn't enough.
Yeah, right.
Like I had to deal with feeling exposed and overwhelmed by my surroundings.
Right. It speaks to the need to consider the recipient's, sensory experience, right? A calm and quiet space can really reduce that overwhelm and allow them to, process the news more clearly. And it also shows them that, that you've put thought into creating a setting that prioritizes their well-being during a difficult moment.
So it's not just about finding an empty room, but it's about intentionally creating a space that feels safe and supportive. It's almost like setting the emotional tone for the conversation.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The article also stresses the importance of timing. They advise against delivering bad news when someone is already stressed or preoccupied with something else.
Right, like right before they have to give a big presentation or right when they're trying to get their kids ready for school.
Exactly.
Really?
Probably not the ideal moments to drop a bombshell.
Yeah. But how do you know when the right time is? I mean, you can't schedule this stuff.
You're right. You sometimes you just don't have the luxury of choosing the perfect moment. But whenever possible, it's worth considering the recipient's, current emotional state and whether they're in a receptive space to handle difficult information.
So it's about being, attuned to their existing stress levels, recognizing that adding bad news to an already full plate could be just totally overwhelming. It's almost like reading the room before you start speaking.
Yes, precisely. The WikiHow article even goes so far as to say, assess the recipient's emotional state beforehand. Are they already anxious or down? Are they likely to be completely blindsided by this news?
So it's about, kind of anticipating their reaction, adjusting your approach. That's taking empathy to a whole new level.
Well, empathy is crucial throughout this whole process, but it's especially important when you're considering the timing and the way you frame the news.
So we've talked about preparing ourselves, right? Setting the stage. But now let's get to the actual delivery of the bad news. This is where it all comes together. What does the WikiHow article suggest?
Well, they have some pretty insightful tips on how to phrase the news. It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being direct and honest while also being sensitive and conveying empathy.
Right. They mention phrases like I have some sad news, which seems to, strike that balance. But is there a danger of being too vague, too euphemistic? Could that actually make the news harder to process?
Oh, that's a really good point. I think it's about finding that right level of directness for the specific situation and for the person that you're talking to. You don't want to sugarcoat things,
right?
Or use really vague language that might just create confusion or false hope.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to be brutally blunt, right? Or insensitive in your delivery.
It's a tough needle to thread.
It is.
What about after the initial news is delivered? I imagine that's where things can get really, really tricky.
Absolutely. The article doesn't just stop at delivering the news. It emphasizes the importance of reacting to the recipient's emotions and providing support.
Okay, so empathy is the foundation, but it's meaningless without action, right? How can we move beyond just saying I'm so sorry to awesome tangible support? Maybe helping with funeral arrangements or childcare or even just being a listening ear. And how do we make sure that our support isn't just a knee-jerk reaction in the moment, but something that's, consistent over time?
You've hit on some really, really key points there. I think the article gives examples like visiting a hospital or seeking counseling.
Right.
But as you mentioned, the type of support that's needed is going to vary
Yeah.
depending on the situation. It's about being proactive and thinking beyond that initial moment of delivering the news.
Yeah.
What concrete actions can you take to help this person cope and move forward?
And I imagine it's also about being mindful of the other person's needs and preferences, right? I mean, what feels supportive to one person might feel intrusive or overwhelming to another.
Exactly, exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to providing support. It's about listening attentively, observing their reactions, and responding in a way that feels, genuine
Right.
and helpful to them. And sometimes the best form of support is simply being present, offering a shoulder to cry on, or just sitting in silence with them.
And I think it's important to remember that offering support isn't just a one-time thing, right? It's about being there for the person in the long run, checking in on them, following through on any promises you make. It's easy to offer help in the heat of the moment, but true support requires, sustained effort, commitment.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The article makes a point of saying, follow through on any offers of assistance that you make.
Yeah.
Don't just, say you'll help and then disappear. Consistency and reliability are key to building trust and providing genuine support.
Well, to wrap up this deep dive, I think we've learned that breaking bad news effectively, it goes far beyond simply stating the facts, right? It's about preparation, empathy, and a commitment to providing ongoing support. Who knew that a WikiHow article could offer such valuable insights?
Right. It's a reminder that wisdom can be found in the most unexpected places. And sometimes the simplest advice can be the most profound. It all comes down to human connection, understanding, and the willingness to show up for others in difficult times.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the art of breaking bad news. I hope you found these insights helpful and maybe even a little bit surprising. Until next time.